always what we start with, Cody and Jeff, is kind of a day in the life of Fifth and Wine. We had fun today. It was very busy, and I'm promising not to browbeat my customers. And we're getting rich right now. It's crazy. We had like $783 in our account this morning. So I mean, everything's just going spectacularly. The cowboy hat thing is for a couple of reasons. I got a little bit grouchy about one more night at home, and so I thought, how am I going to get a good attitude? And then I remembered our good friend Gordo McManus, who passed away about a year ago, and he always wore a cowboy hat golfing with flip-flops, and it made me smile and laugh. And he was my friend for a long time. But one of my favorite things is on Saturday he used to come down, and we called them mimosa bitches. So if you come down and work and you just make mimosas, you just get paid in mimosas. So he used to come down and be our mimosa bitch. And he always wore a cowboy hat for that. So that's the whole cowboy hat story. And I'm gonna keep it on. My wife was against it. She thought I looked silly, but I don't care. And I've got a story about Nashville too. We got a little time tonight, Saturday night. What the hell? So I was in Nashville and I had cowboy boots on, and I had some time, and I went down and I found a guy that was shining shoes, and so I sat down. He's a elderly black man from Nashville with a really heavy accent, and I have absolutely no idea what he was saying pretty much the whole time. But he kept asking me about horses, and I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet from Montana that has cowboy boots and has never really ridden a horse. So I don't know anything about it. I'm not a cowboy. I bought this for Gordo's remembrance, and I paid $15 at Fleet, whatever that's called, Fleet Supply. So that's the cowboy hat story. The next story is going to be our beer tasting. I think Tara's got pictures maybe. We're gonna try at least. Our beer tasting is up to 43 people now. So it's bigger than any of the wine ones by one. So there's a lot of, there you go, there's the beer. That's what the story I was telling last night, where all the workers came in and from Eagle and did the Albertsons thing and worked hard for us once. So that was awesome. So we still have about 7 left to sell. If anybody wants to join in, it's gonna be, I'm really actually excited about it. And that's kind of a segue to KRTV. Came and did an interview today with me, and we talked about, he'd heard about the virtual wine tastings, and so they wanted to do a story on it. And he said, why, he asked me some questions. One of the questions was, it's gonna be playing on Monday, I think. He said he thinks it's Monday. He said, why did you switch to beer? I said, because all my wine people's livers are getting worn out. So that probably didn't look good on an interview. And then he said, so the head of the CDC said we shouldn't be drinking so much. We should cut back on our drinking during this time because it's very unhealthy. And he said, what do you think about that? I'm like, wow. You know, the head of the CDC probably knows more than I do, but everybody that I know has been drinking more. So I guess it's up to everybody individually to do what they want to do. So anyway, hopefully Monday, 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock, that'll be on. So that's fun. Kathy and I are going to run in the icebreaker tomorrow morning. So we'll be down there, I think about 9:30, kind of do the warm up on Central. And then she'll run and I really do a walk. So the last time I did the mile, it was 12 minutes. So I did the 12-minute mile. That's not bad. So we really are going to do that just for fun. We're going to stay 6 feet apart from everybody, not breaking any laws. And
so it wasn't canceled, or it was canceled?
It's canceled for sure.
Yeah, okay.
And then our special next week, I think Tara's putting up on the screen right now. There you go. I made that today. That's a Cubano sandwich. And I'm not going to say where we had one in Great Falls because I'm trying to support all Great Falls. It was the worst thing I've ever had. So I just decided to make a true Cubano that I think represents what I've had well, I've never been to Cuba, but I've been to Florida. So that's smoked pork shoulder. We made our own aioli, mustard and horseradish and garlic and lemon zest. And we put lots of it on there because I like a really sloppy sandwich. And then pickle, as you can see on top, and pepperoncini and slaw. So it was really good. Absolutely loved it. So I think that's about it for Fifth and Wine stuff, right, Tara? All right,
Yeah.
terrific.
See the cowboy hat.
So tonight we have Cody. He's from Forgeron Cellars in Walla Walla. Cody and I and Kathy and a bunch of us went out there and met him last January, and he was gracious enough to spend time with us. And he was the last on our wine tasting tour. Like, I think we'd done 4. So there's a chance we were semi-inebriated without the semi part. So he put up with that, and we had a lot of fun with him. He's a young man. So he's going to tell us his story to start with, kind of how he got in the wine world. It's really interesting, kind of. I just read it yesterday on the website. So Cody, you want to start with that?
I mean, I guess so. If I have to talk about myself, I guess I will. Yeah, so I started out here in Walla Walla in 2011 during the Walla Walla CC program. As I was starting the program, I actually started working for Forgeron, and in that it kind of aligned, and I was able to start working at this beautiful facility. And in that regards to it all, I started the program right when I turned 18, which was an eye-opening to everybody around there, being that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't taste any of the wines that we were being presented. I couldn't really do much of anything other than sit in front of the table where everybody else had wine in front of them, and I had empty glasses. And it was just great. It was hard for a bit. But after the first year went by, they really noticed that I wasn't really trying to mess around, and I was trying to be there and try to be a part of something bigger. And it ended up getting noticed through the dean at the school, as well as while we were kind of talking it through of what we could do so I could maybe actually be able to taste the wine, is try and start a sip and spit rule for people under 21. And it had one of those, I mean, it was a complication of having people under 21 tasting wine in class, and brought it up to the dean, which there was already a sip rule being implemented throughout everybody. And he actually accepted it, but we had to go and I'd abide by 3 different rules. And first rule was we had to obviously make sure we sip and spat. If we didn't, then we would get ejected from the program. We had to accept any breathalyzer at any point in time, obviously, to check on us. And then the third was I'd have somebody drive me to and from school whenever there was a tasting day. So it was definitely very structured to where it worked. And in that time where everything was going on, still working with Forgeron, everything really clicked. So as I was completing the program, I was completing being an intern here and was promoted to assistant winemaker. And then as Marie retired back in June of 2018, I was promoted to head winemaker and assumed the role of making these beautiful wines for everybody. And it's phenomenal. I just love every bit of what I do every day. So, yeah.
Jeff Pita's on here. Jeff is I think the sales guy. Hi, Jeff. Maybe unmute yourself for a second if you could. Well, that's probably, I don't know if I should actually do that or not. Can you unmute yourself, Jeff?
We might not be able to stop him.
I know, that's what I'm worried about.
Generally, they put me on a 500-word limit, so I'll just say hello from Seattle and thank you for inviting us.
So Jeff, can we just talk for a minute about Marie and kind of the history of your relationship with Forgeron and kind of your role too?
Sure. So selling wine has been my career for 30 plus years. And in my history of selling wine, I worked with Marie when she was at Covey Run, Hogue Cellars, and Gordon Brothers.
And hold on one second, Jeff. So Marie is the original winemaker at Forgeron, right? Or at least has been there.
Yeah, a founding partner, original winemaker.
Right.
And when they were looking for someone to assist them with sales, Marie gave me a call as I was getting off a plane in Spokane, and she goes, well, can you come down and meet the partners? So instead of selling wine that day, I drove from Spokane to Walla Walla, met the partners, and they hired me that evening. And I started being their broker in 2017. So I've known Marie, well, we kind of grew up together, I guess you could say, since our careers were pretty parallel.
When I first met Marie, I think it was Jake and Tara. I don't remember what that, probably 5 years ago now, I bet. We went out to Walla Walla and I made an appointment, or probably Tara did actually, would be the truth. But we made an appointment to go to Forgeron, and we met this little, she's seriously like 5'1" and just a spitfire. She reminds me of my mother. She's French. She is opinionated. She's like a whirlwind. Like she was so cool. We absolutely loved her. And so when we heard, and Cody, don't take this wrong, when we heard Marie was leaving, we're like, oh man, that's gonna be a little stretch of, I don't know, whatever, you know. And then we come and meet Cody, and he's like, 12 years old approximately. And
I think I turned 13 when you came.
then we taste the wines that he's making, and you're like, oh no, it's not missing a beat. And I'm not just saying that because you're on here either. You have not missed a beat. You're doing an awesome job. So maybe talk about the winery and the name of the story, Forgeron, and all that, if you could, for a minute.
Yeah. So in 2001, Forgeron Cellars was started actually here in the building that I'm sitting in. The name comes from the Forgeron, or the French term for blacksmith. And so right up in our Walla Walla tasting room, actually used to be a blacksmith shop at the turn of the century. And in that's where the name came from. And that's why more of the labels are becoming that. We have our blacksmith label, our Forgeron label, and our Anvil label. So each kind of representing an artisanal factor. And when we started, it was, the funny story that I love always telling is when they were putting the foundation in, they actually found, I don't know how many countless number of horseshoes actually underneath the tasting room. And as they started pulling them out, they stopped after they found maybe a dozen, and they stopped and they threw them all back in, and we're like, well, we want to make sure we keep all of the luck in the building, so we don't want to take all the horseshoes out. And paved right over top of it. And yeah, this became the lucky spot of Forgeron, whole production facility and everything.
And it's right downtown. So if you stay at the Whitmore Hotel, it's probably what, 2-block walk or something?
Well, a little bit more. I mean, it's like 5 to 6, but really,
I'm really young and in shape, so it probably felt like 2 blocks to me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just like skipped over quite a few. It works. It works.
And there's a bar or two between here and there.
Yeah. There's a few stops you can definitely make. There's some pit stops.
Right. So tell us about kind of the style of wine that you think you make, both whites and reds, and before we get into the vineyards, maybe just that whole story of even oak, and we've talked a lot about this. These guys are very familiar with it, so we don't have to get too in depth. But.
Yeah, no, of course. So what I try and do is it's more of taking the grapes and putting them on a gentle transition from grapes to wine to into the bottle to in your glass. So everything is done in a very gentle process where the amount of oak that we're using never exceeds 33, maybe 40%. On the reds, it might hit 40. On whites, definitely no more over than a third of it is actually new oak influence. And so it's just a nice, elegant, gentle touch to get where we're starting from these beautiful, amazing grapes, which we'll get into the vineyards. But everything that I'm doing is I'm just kind of carrying it into its next phase. And every single one of my fruit sources, what it really takes, and it makes it so nice and easy to work with, that I have these amazing vineyard sources that we've been sourcing from since since the start in 2001, and some being from like 2004 or 5, and we've been working with them ever since.
You and I talked about them earlier. I think one of my favorite vineyards that I've had multiple wineries make is Dick Boucher's vineyard, the Dionysus vineyard, the Clipsum you did at least for a while. I mean, these names are really synonymous with the best quality of Washington wines that lots of people make wines out of those vineyards, but you seem to have, Forgeron seems to have a ton of the best vineyard and the best fruit. And tell us also your involvement in, you know, what goes on in the summer and the harvest and with these vineyards.
Yeah, so being that the Dionysus Vineyard, Boucher, and Clipson, which I worked with a bit while I was here, each one of those wines actually became the Anvil series, so the upper luxury tier that we produce here, because those wines, once you even just have fermented them, everything about them is, there's so much intensity and so much vibrancy with them that I can't even control it in the bottle, and putting it in those Anvil bottles is where it gets its name, and where Anvil is that just, I can't even explain it really, because it's so much, it's so beautiful. And we've kind of really been able to, working with Dick Boucher is just the most amazing thing. He's the funniest guy, because I'll call him and I'll ask him about like how everything's going, what's happening. End up looking down at my phone about an hour later, and we've been on the phone the whole time talking, probably scanned the whole world talking about any sort of little piece of information. And he's just the most humble guy to work with. And it's an amazing relationship to have with
I don't know if you ever heard of Dick Shea out of Willamette Valley, but they are just farmers first, you know, like kind of they're just worried about the fruit. And so do you get a lot of control? Do you say to Dick, please do this or that, or harvest then? Or
yeah, I don't want to, I mean, I'm going to say I surprised him the first year that I started, because I called him and we were getting ready to pick our Grenache. And I was like, hey, Dick, can you pick this Grenache next week? It's like, are you sure? That's pretty early. And I was like, but what I'm going for is we're going for a light Grenache to really show the expression on your varietal. It's like, gee, that's a great idea. Like, yeah, let's get this started. Like, okay, so what day do you want to pick? And I was like, well, let's go this day. He's like, are you sure? I think might be some rain happening. I was like, okay, well, let's go the day prior. And he's like, okay, I'll make room. Like, we'll be all good. I was like, cool, that sounds great. And even in that first year, him and I mean, we created a relationship that I don't know, you can't really explain it. It was just,
it's cool that he respects you, because he's an older man, and you know, you're not old.
No, definitely not.
I think it's fun that he respects you and your decisions, and yeah, that's awesome. And then, you know, the other vineyards too, maybe talk a little bit about, because I know you do Wallach Slope and you do Walla Walla and you do Horse Heaven Hill, Red Mountain. Got
this nice almost vineyard triangle that we pull from in Washington, being the most farthest north corner being Wallach Slope up at Stone Tree and Winebow Vineyard, where we pull Malbec from one and Chardonnay from the other. And then going down in the farthest left-hand corner is our Alder Ridge Zinfandel from Horse Heaven Hills. And then back here in beautiful Walla Walla, where we pull every Bordeaux varietal possible, and being from Minnick Hills and the beautiful side of Seven Hills. Everything is now becoming one and becoming what our winery is trying to go towards. Every single wine has its place, and every single varietal has its place in where it's going. And it's a whole other feeling to have that. And I mean, I even grabbed, which I don't know how well this is going to work over Zoom, but just a few soil samples in the way that, I don't know if I can really show this very well, but this is Boucher vineyard fruit or vineyard dirt. And you can kind of see, I don't know if you can really see it. It looks very sandy. And this is the exact, you can almost, which I wish I could get more of the rocks to pop up, but Boucher is over top of like volcanic rock as well as the sandy soil. But then if you look at Dionysus Vineyard, this is more of like a loamy sand coming through here, where it's more coagulated right there. And even
What's the
just
difference? What happens in those soil types? What's the difference in the fruit in the end?
so I mean, sandy soils, more of the water is going to go through the soil faster because of the particles. The sand particles are so much larger than loamy soil like Dionysus. So depending on how their watering cycle is, which I'm guessing Boucher, they're watering a bit more to create, to help with the stress levels of those vineyards or of the vines, where Dionysus is kind of, they can step back a little bit because they're sitting on this beautiful, right up above Columbia Valley right here. So this is Dionysus Vineyard, if nobody's seen it.
What ABA is Dionysus in?
Columbia. So it's a little bit south, or I mean, it's north of Pasco, but it's in between. It's getting close, or I mean, I was trying to explain it, but I just lost it.
Is it between Red Mountain and Walook? Is that kind of where it is?
Yeah, if you took a half and then went a little eastward from there, then yeah, that's about where it would be.
Hmm. And where's Boucher?
Boucher being a little west of Red Mountain, so in the Prosser area, but right on the south end of the Rattlesnake Hills AVA, which I don't ever bring up that AVA because he gets pretty bent out of shape that he wasn't included in there, but I won't say too much about that.
The first time we did this is tonight. We got some people drinking white, which is a blend, and some people drinking red. And since Kathy and I are drinking white, let's talk about white first, because it's all about us.
Yeah, of course. So it's the 2015 Facon Blanc. And this one, it's such a fun varietal, or it's such a fun blend, being that those three varietals are together and so intertwined that it creates a whole other palate tingle as you're tasting it. I mean, having Roussanne and Viognier and Grenache Blanc in one glass, each one of them hit a different point, and I mean, you're getting more of the viscosity from the Roussanne, but those floral and fruity notes from the Viognier, and then that Grenache Blanc puts that nice little back end touch on it that it keeps enticing you every time you taste it, because everything is so interconnected. And I don't know how to explain it much more, because it's been put into a different way of fermenting and aging a white wine, especially a Rhone white wine. It was done 100% in barrel. And as it aged in barrel and over the top of the lees, it creates this more roundness in your palate as you're tasting it, where it's just more scintillating throughout the mouth. And I think that's one thing that Marie really was able to teach me, of how well these white wines could be. And
age, this is a 2015 that everybody has in their glass.
Yeah, which we've opened up a few around here, some 2002 Chardonnay, and looked at the tasting notes and compared it to that bottle we opened, and they were almost identical to where the tastes were at for those white wines. And you don't see that very often, especially just a regular corked bottle of wine. It's phenomenal. Yeah,
these three grapes, for everybody that doesn't know, are generally grown in the southern Rhone of Rhone Valley of France. We tasted that Viognier, for those of you that were with us with William. And so this is really a true southern Rhone blend that these guys are reproducing in Washington. And Washington and the southern Rhone have pretty similar climates, very hot summers, cool winters, lots of wind. So I think it makes sense that you guys are making Rhone varietal wines in Walla Walla or in Washington. So go on to the red, because that's another, the same thing, three grapes from the Rhone Valley originally that seem to grow well in Washington too, right, Cody?
Yeah, so going on to the Blacksmith Rouge, the GSM, this one, as I kind of explained with the Blanc, I think the GSM kind of really hits every single point even farther. With the Grenache, it's the first thing you get on your front palate, that first fruity texture, but then the Syrah is what covers the whole mid palate and is the whole body of that wine. And that Morvet is that last bit of that kick of spice in the very end that keeps you wanting to taste the next time, so you can get that last little hint. And with both of these wines, they've mainly, the Rouge actually came from Boucher Vineyard, that Grenache and the Syrah. The Grenache Blanc from the Facon Blanc was 100% from Boucher. So each one of these has phenomenal grapes in them for their price points. And I don't think I could have made well, being myself, I couldn't have made a better Blacksmith Rouge. The 15 Blanc was enough of me putting my hands into it to help guide it along its way. And I don't know, I don't have a lot to explain about them when everybody tastes them in their glass, it's almost explains itself a lot of the time,
Yeah.
which is nice to have, definitely.
I think we just talked about GSM, so that's kind of what, if you see the words Côte de Rhône on a bottle in my store or in anybody's store, generally those are the three grapes, Grenache, Syrah, Morvet. It is allowed by law, well, Châteauneuf-du-Pape has up to 13 grapes or whatever, but generally it's going to be GSM. And there was a group of Californians that started, I think maybe in the 80s, called the Rhone Rangers. And they were the first ones to kind of try to redo what happened in Southern Rhone in America. And I think they did a nice job, but I actually think the Washington Rhone varietals are superior in my palate, at least. So. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about what other wines you do. The Anvil, for instance, we have in our store, and it's about a $65, $70 bottle of Cabernet blend. But tell us about what else is going on in your cellar, what other projects you're working on, or what other wines that you really love in your portfolio.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky that I'm able to make quite an array of wines. In the white selection, we actually started a unoaked Chardonnay program under our Artist Series label, and it's pushing out the expression of stainless steel Chardonnay and how beautiful it really can be and how expressive Lee's unoaked Chardonnay can be.
And tell them about, we all know in the industry about Chablis, which is always unoaked, and Chablis is a Chardonnay out of France. So you guys are trying to emulate that a little bit, right?
A little bit, but putting the Washington state style on it, not trying to mimic something, but trying to improve and create something, Washington. Presenting Washington onto a bigger scale. And I'm not going to be able to do it myself, but I know there's a lot of us out here that are trying our best to make, we can make it. It's just going to take a little bit of time to get exactly where we need to be. And
so we have a restaurant that obviously, we used to at least, and we're going to again soon, I hope, serve wines by the glass. And we're always careful about serving things that kind of maybe are unusual. Like we did a dry Riesling this year. In this tasting, I think last week from Gilbert Cellars. But one of the things that we've noticed is we like to put in a Chardonnay that's unoaked, and then we got in trouble for that. So we always now have to keep oaky, buttery Chardonnay, and we do different ones. But unoaked, if you guys have not tasted an unoaked Chardonnay or a lightly oaked or whatever, Burgundy is obviously the homeland for that. Well, I think we said this, a few nights ago when we were drinking Chardonnay, like it's one of the best grapes, and none of us ever drink it because we're always, not none of us, some of us don't drink it because we don't really love that butter oak. I want to taste the fruit. And so he's right, his unoaked Chardonnay is amazing.
Well, thank you. And being that, our Chardonnay has always been kind of our flagship wine, and that's what we make. I make 3 of them now. So I make our full unoaked Chard, then I make our Forgeron Chard, which has about 30% new oak in it. and then I make our anvil shard, which is 50% new, 50% 1-year oak. So that gets more of the buttery style, but it's more integrated because of the vineyard that I use to make that wine. And each one of them has a different style to them. And, you know, I'm not just trying to say this to push out a sales plan, but having all 3 of those in a lineup and tasting them at home would definitely be a treat of all things. So,
Cody, are you kidding me? Of course we're pushing out sales plans right now.
We do.
We need sales.
yeah. Well, no, of course.
All
I'm
good.
trying my best, okay?
So I want to talk about this.
Oh,
So when Marie Eve ran Forgeron, they were very staid, French, very whatever. And now we have this as our label on your rosé and all the Forgerons. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition from those labels to these labels?
yeah. So, which is a perfect one to show. So that's our Pink Rabbits Rosé of Syrah. And that one we were lucky enough to be graced by, it's actually our general manager who thought of the idea. It comes from a song, oh, I just lost it. It's Pink Rabbits by, I just lost the artist. But
right, we have Google. We'll do it and get it back to you.
yeah, well, somebody will find it, right? Somebody will throw it up on the chat and we'll be able to play it. But there's a line in there that says, what is it? And Jeff might be able to assist me. I've lost it too. Is sitting in my fainting chair drinking Pink Rabbits, and he always wanted to make a wine to kind of tie that in together. And Pink Rabbits Rosé, I mean, it can't have a better pairing. And when we talked and we're thinking about making that beautiful artist series label, we were trying to think of ideas of if there was another artist or another mural that we could use to create another wine out of it. We started with the Pink Rabbits. It's like, well, it's rosé. It's going to be very, at least easy on one side to mimic, but on the other side of me trying to replicate a wine that would kind of array that certain color to follow the backdrop of that label definitely made that wine very difficult to make. But we talked to the artist, and it took a week maybe of just sitting there twiddling my fingers, hoping that she was going to accept our offer of being able to use her art on our label. And she ended up replying back and saying, that would be wonderful. Like, yeah, I would love to see my art on your label. And so each one of our artist series labels are actually murals throughout the world. And the Pink Rabbits label is actually a mural done in the UK. And our otherworldly unoaked Chardonnay is a mural done in Chicago. And then our Imaginarium Red is a mural done in Boston.
And isn't it kind of street art? Not necessarily like on a...
You almost, especially on the rosé, you can see the brickwork on that label, and it really comes out on the next series of labels that it's so pronounced that you can see it completely layered all around the bottle. And we were just so happy with talking with her. We actually flew her in from New York, where she lives, to do a mural in Woodinville for us in our tasting room. And she actually did a full-on mural alongside of our garage, or the event space that we have there. And it just came out so beautiful, and we were so happy to see them there. They were the most humble people to have around. Like, it completely changes your array of an artist and how, like, you all see them like on shows or anything, how artists are always this hoity-toity, like kind of pushing everybody aside. They were so happy to be around us. And I was just out tasting, or we were tasting inside the tasting room, tasting one wine and tasting a different wine. And they were like, we've never had wine before. Like, this is so great. And they were in Woodinville, and they were taking their kid out to go on walks, and they're like, there's so much space here. I've never seen so much space and so much grass. You should come to the east side of the state. It'll be a lot better, I promise. But they were, it was phenomenal. It was amazing to have them there.
Woodinville's an interesting story. I think that you guys on the east side have always, had your own tasting rooms, and I don't even know who the first one was. Sato Saint Michel, I think, right? In Woodinville. So Woodinville is what, maybe an hour drive or from downtown Seattle, 45 minutes. And so now I'll bet there's, how many tasting rooms are in Woodinville, do you think?
I mean, upwards into the 180s as far as I remember in that number. To the same extent of what we have here in Walla Walla. So, but in a much smaller area.
And obviously no vineyards there or anything. I mean, everybody's trucking in their finished wine, I guess. No, there are some wineries too, aren't there? They're bringing in grapes. So.
Yeah, and they pull them off. I've actually talked to a few over there, and they pull from quite a few sources that I pull from, but it takes them about 4 extra hours to grab the fruit and bring it back to Woodinville.
Right.
And, I mean, that's got to be, it's a hassle and a half to deal with. So.
And probably a little bit of degradation in quality, I would imagine. I mean, the quicker fermentation. Yeah,
definitely a little bit more care you have to put into every little cluster that you have picked and brought with you, especially over the pass, depending on how traffic and everything is when you're getting over there. So definitely a whole other set of factors.
For Montanans, we have direct flights from Great Falls to Seattle or wherever. So it's a lot easier to go taste in Woodinville than it is to go to Seattle and then go to Yakima and then drive to Walla Walla. You guys are hard to get to.
I mean, we do have a flight from Seattle to Walla Walla if you could catch it, but I mean, it's an easy flight. It's only 45 minutes. So, and then you get right down into dead center of Walla Walla. It's a really easy drive from there.
Yeah, right. It's actually a pretty decent drive in the summer from Great Falls. It's not that big a deal. It's like 5-6 hours or something. So. All right. Anybody got any other questions, or you want to add anything more, Cody, or how are you doing?
I mean, I'm doing pretty good.
Well, we all got wine. It's Saturday night.
I know. I mean, it's beautiful out here. I mean, we're an hour behind you, but I've got sunny blue skies. I don't think I even see a cloud in sight right now. So we still got daylight to spend.
Cody, you have been really a very gracious guest, and we really want to thank you. And I told you that, I told them that you would be good, and I didn't lie. You were, and you gave us lots of information. I'm really impressed with your career and your age and what you've accomplished already. Can't wait to see what you accomplish in the future. And seriously, you guys, I'm not just saying this because he's here. In fact, Cody, if you could get off, I would tell everybody, if you don't mind. You seriously are making some great lines, and I'm really impressed and happy that you guys are kind of, it feels to me like you're kind of heading into the future and, kind of keeping the old, but also trying new things. And so I think it's fun. No, it definitely is. I mean, I don't lie about, when I walk through the door here every day, it's, I don't know. I never really, I don't have a lot of words because it's so amazing. Like everything that I feel every single day that I walk through the door is just a treat. And everything that I put into these wines is what exactly I hope from you guys. I mean, hearing these words, it's a whole other feeling. And this is exactly why I love making wine. I mean, I want to make wine for everybody. And I get lucky enough because I think I do maybe 25 different wine varietals, or at least lots that I'm able to really work with. So it's definitely a little pressure on me to make sure I can exactly get every single one of them where I need it to be. But it's a total payoff when I'm able to taste it with anybody and talk about it. It makes it a whole other experience that I just love every day. Yeah, we talked about your passion after we left you when we met you in Walla Walla, and we went, and I think we went to a local church or something. I can't remember what we did after meeting with you, but we talked about your passion, and it just comes through. And the lucky thing is we also talked about how young you started. So some winemakers really don't get to do their first solo vintage till they're probably 35 or 40. And so they probably only get 25 chances to make wine, you know, and to bottle things. And you got started so young, you might have 40, 45 vintages under your belt before you're done. So yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. We'll talk to you in 25 years. Well, I won't be alive. Like, let's go 15 years.
Sure, that sounds great to me. I would love that.
And then we've been talking with everybody, a good time to visit Walla Walla, and I think there's not a bad time in the summer. It's just like Montana. It's got the same basic, you know, June is fine, July, August, September, October, right?
Yeah, no, it's beautiful because it's exactly when all the wheat fields are turning gold. So when you start driving in, it's just waves of gold going through. And even then, there's like a little time prior to that where they're just ripening, so they'll be green and gold. And so as you come through, there's this nice wave that you see. And even when you're driving in, it's just this calm, it's just such a calmness. And with all the trees around here, it's just phenomenal. It's like I couldn't have found a better place to settle and to relax. I mean, I grew up in central of Washington, up in Royal City, where it was just farmland, where it was flat and very just relaxed and growing up on the farm. But this is a whole other being where we have this full community where I don't really have to drive 30 minutes out to go to a decent store. I have to drive 5 minutes across town to find anything that I need to grab. And it's just a very homey feel. And I couldn't have found a better place to settle.
I agree. I think it was like Napa was like that probably in the 60s, and McMinnville, I think, was like that in the early 2000s. And Walla Walla is still, it's definitely changed, but it still has the neighborhood feeling to it. Great restaurants and whatever.
That's what I've heard. And I hope Walla Walla doesn't change. I mean, our population hasn't changed probably for the last 10 years. And even since when I've been here, the amount of growth really hasn't changed. It's all dependent on college students, actually, of all things. I mean, the three colleges around here regulate the population very quickly. But it's just a very nice hometowny feel vibe. I mean, it's like being back in my 10 times smaller town where I grew up on. If you hear one thing on one side of the city, you hear it on the other side by the next day. So you definitely have to watch your P's and Q's everywhere.
Right. All right. Well, I think we'll let everybody go. Thank you so much. Seriously, it was fun. And thanks for spending your Saturday night with us. That's awesome. Let's do a cheers to Cody and to Forgeron and to Jeff, but he's not visible anymore. So we'll see you on Tuesday for the beer tasting. Those of you involved. I don't remember who it is. That's Kalispell Brewing, I think, yeah, out of Kalispell. So that was really interesting. I don't know anything about beer. I downloaded the Cicerone fancy book. I think I told you, and I started reading it today. So I'll probably know a lot about beer by Tuesday, but they were really interesting. They really seriously knew their beer and followed the old German practices. So it'll be really interesting to talk to him. I think there's two of them actually on. Maybe the owner and the brewmaster and the sales guy. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to beer. I can't believe I even just said that. But the tagline I did hate for the book I bought, it said the world's best beverage beer. I'm like, no. Anyway, so that's all. All right. Thanks everybody. We'll see you Tuesday, we hope. Cheers.